Welcome to Lifeness with Logan Hall. It's life, it's business, it's Lifeness. Live from the StriveVenta.com studios, here's Logan Hall.
All right. Thank you for listening. It's a great day when you're listening to Lifeness. I'm your host, Logan Hall. It's Lifeness. It's life. It's business. It's Lifeness. Again, want to thank all you listeners out there for tuning in. Please share us with all your friends on your social media. Let everyone know that they need a good positive vibe, a little pick 'em up, a glass is half full kind of perspective. Make sure you tell them to tune on in to us. Just go to lifenesswithloganhall.com. And every week we're evolving the website. We're looking into getting a new app developed to where it'll help the ease of listening to it from your phone and from your tablets. But again, thank you so much for listening. We have a terrific show today, and this one's a little bit off the cuff of what we typically do. We're, always positive and focused on good stories, and we've got a positive, good story guy in here today. This guy's, I've got to know him here really well in the short, brief time. This guy is going to be a fun guest today, you guys. We've got a guy by the name of Billy O'Connor. Thanks for coming on, Billy.
Delighted to be here, Logan. Delighted to be here, pal.
All right. So, Billy, I'm sure our listeners can detect you've got a little bit of an accent there. Would you mind telling everyone where you're from?
Montgomery, Alabama. How's that sound?
Montgomery, Alabama? No. I'm going to have to call malarkey on that.
No, I'm from the Bronx, New York. I grew up in the Bronx. That accent never really leaves you, I guess. Believe me, if I could talk any other way, I would. It's not that I want to talk like this. I ain't got much choice. I was born in County Cork, Ireland, and then my parents immigrated here in 1950.
Through Ellis Island, you said they came over on a boat, right?
On a boat.
They're that typical melting pot story. Come on over and get some of the USA.
Exactly right. And not only that, in them days, most people don't realize in 1950, it still took 12 hours to cross the Atlantic by plane. This is before supersonic jets. It took 12 hours to go from New York to California. So I had never been on a plane. I'd never been on a plane in my life until I was 18 when I first saddled up to go to Vietnam. I mean, the government took care of my first plane ride. But that was the norm in them days. It's just a different world.
Absolutely.
Totally different world. I mean, kids now are on planes when they're 3 years old, 12, 13 trips. It wasn't like that back then.
So born in Ireland, came through, parents immigrated in 1950, grew up on the streets of Bronx, New York.
New York.
How was that, man?
I tell you what, Logan, honest to God, growing up in the 50s in the Bronx was closest thing to heaven you could ever imagine. I mean, we all lived in tenements. We were all poor, but nobody knew we were poor. We didn't know we were poor. All I knew was every time I left my house, I went down those 5 flights of stairs with all of those kids. There was about 50 or 60 kids my age to play with, and you grew up with all different ethnic groups. And you hear a lot about the melting pots in New York, but when you're growing up as a kid, the only 3 things mattered is you stand-up guy. Can he hit how far can he hit a stick ball? How far can he hit a ball? And he got my back. That's all that counted. But my father was an alcoholic, big-time alcoholic. I mean, the real deal. And there was a lot of abuse in my house and everything else. By the time I got to be 18, another thing back in them days, let's see, when I was 18, I was 1966. When I was graduating high school, not a lot of kids went to college. The highest, maybe 10% of the high school class would go to college. If they had money, if they had really if they excelled academically, they would. But other than that, it was you going to work, you're going into the Army because the draft was still there. Mm-hmm. And I figured, well, look, my old man was out of his mind. I said, at least if I join the Air Force, if I go to Vietnam, at least with these guys, I got a chance. I can fight back.
Get out of the Bronx, get away from Dad.
And the drugs started to pour in then, too, in 66. This was the Beatles were just starting to roll, and all this tune in, drop out, like that whole deal was going on. So a lot of drugs started pouring into the Bronx. And I saw my friends started getting wrapped up in heroin and
decided you needed to get out somehow.
Yeah, so I figured, you know what, I'd go to Southeast Asia because what's the odds of Southeast Asia having any drugs,
Probably pretty good. Come to find out when you show up, it's the same situation.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I don't know if you're familiar with the disease of alcoholism, but you can't run from yourself. No matter where you go, you bring yourself with you. And these geological cures don't work. But I didn't find that out until I guess I've been sober now about close to 10 years. Actually, no, I guess about 7 years. After 9/11, I was a first responder at 9/11. I was a firefighter in the South Bronx in Harlem. Always the busiest houses because I liked the juice. It was always about the juice.
That rush, that adrenaline.
Yeah. That's why gambling. That's why alcoholism. That's why.
That's what gets you going.
All my whole life, I've always been a juice junkie. More than anything else. More than alcoholism. That's why the gambling, compulsive gambling. I never went half into anything. It was always full speed ahead.
Wagering it all.
Yeah,
let's ride it. Let's parlay everything and all or nothing.
Exactly.
You're all in.
So exactly, always all in. So after, I was first responder at 9/11, and about 2 or 3 months after that, I went down to Keys. Of course, we took a beating that day. I lost 45 friends personally.
And not, I want to share the bright side of that is the camaraderie that came about from that. Now, the fire department and the police department, NYU, guys have always been well respected around the world for what you do. But the fact of the matter of how in such a situation like that, how everybody had to come together to work synergistically to make it work, is amazing.
It was astonishing.
I share on the past shows kind of about life that, when something happens, you can either respond or you can react, right? Okay, you guys are called responders because you do it methodically. You try to take the emotion out of it. You've got a job at hand. And look at, there would have been thousands of more people who would have lost their lives had the fire department and the police department and everybody there involved had not worked together and responded to that situation. You personally lost 40...
I lost 45 guys.
Man, that's tough.
We lost 343 total.
Mm-hmm.
But 45 guys I knew. I probably would have known more, but most of the guys that died that day were young kids. They were the cream of the crop. The only reason I knew so many, they were all officers, because I had already been on the job 21 years when it happened. And, of course, it's almost like being a soldier in World War II. And you define your time, before World War II and after World War II. It's like... It doesn't matter what you did up until 9/11.
Pre-9/11, does it? Post 9/11.
That's right. It's all about 9/11 defined our job, and you're right about coming together. I saw dowagers. rich dowagers, Park Avenue, down at the dig, in Minks, with sandwiches, making sandwiches for first responders and the iron workers and EMS and the cops and.
Everybody came together.
We just couldn't have did it without those guys. And then firemen came from all over the country, from all over the world. We had guys flying in from London, It was incredible. We took that away. That great camaraderie. But what I did was after I retired, I went down to Keys. I told my girlfriend, I said, look, I want to go far south as I can get. I said, wherever, I just want to get out of here.
Now, let me ask you, had you planned on trying to take an exit out of the fire department, maybe around that time, or was the 9/11 event, you said, all right, I'm in, I've done my 20 years, I can get my pension, girlfriend, let's go get some sun, and let's go relax and get out of here. Well, did it kind of prompt you to accelerate getting out of the force?
Yeah, I had 23 years on, and I had just taken a captain's test about 3 months earlier. And I didn't do well on that captain's test because I had a lot of things going on in my life. I had a restaurant that was sinking and, a lot of stuff. Anyway, no excuses. I didn't do well on the captain's test, and the captain's test comes along every 5 years. So I was 50-50 about getting out anyway. And then after 9/11, I just said, you know what? Life is short enough, man. And I went down to Keys, and I always wanted a sailboat. A kid from the Bronx, I wouldn't know a sailboat from a manhole cover. And I ended up buying it like a small sailboat, and I sailed every day while I was down there. My girlfriend was a teacher, so she taught English down in Key West High School, and I found myself getting drunk every day,
Well, you got a boat, you're in the sun, by the beach.
I'm in the Keys.
Right, you don't have a job, you're retired. You just went through some serious stressful stuff in your life, saw some stuff, lost some people. Hey, what else are you going to do down there, right?
And I didn't need much of a push, believe me, Logan. But I really didn't need much of a push. It didn't take much for me to be. I was already. I had owned a couple of bars. I'm Irish. I'm surrounded by that whole culture.
It's almost inevitable that you're going to drink.
Yeah, well, like I said, and everybody in my family's dead from alcoholism. Alcohol doesn't run in my family. It gallops. Everybody's dead from alcohol in my family. My mother, Lord have mercy on my mother, she didn't even know there was another way you could die. I remember telling my mother one time a friend of hers had died. She told me, but Billy, Mike Fitzmaurice, dead, is he? But he didn't drink at all. She couldn't believe there was another way you could die because everybody in my family's dead from cirrhosis. So I started punishing it pretty good. And after about 5 or 6 years of that, I just said, you know what, maybe, I guess 4 years of that. I said, I just had enough. You know, I'm done with this. And I stopped.
You just clean up, straight up, stopped. Was there an event, something that happened, like you woke up one morning with a black eye, couldn't find the sailboat, it's out floating around in the middle of the ocean, and thought, this is crazy? What
I've had so
many of those?
Many incidents that, I mean...
finally one day,
oh,
enough,
I mean, I'm talking about, when I used to drink, it wasn't, again... I don't do anything half 50%.
I'm the same way. I'm all in, baby.
I went all in. I mean, I actually, one time, I can remember, this is kind of, I mean, it's sad looking back at it now, but it was funny at the time. I mean, I remember waking up one day in my bed with a woman's prosthetic leg next to me after a 3-day load. No idea how it got there. I don't know if somebody threw it in there. I don't know if I stole it.
Wow.
I'd like to think that if there was a woman involved.
So now that we're getting to the prosthetic leg part, you know, we've seen movies where there's a horse's head in the bed. Yeah, I've never heard of the one with the missing prosthetic leg. So, hey, you guys, we're going to take a short break. This is a very exciting, awesome interview. We're going to get back. We're going to talk a little bit more about Billy. He's got a book. He's got a comedy tour, but a little bit more about himself and some trials and tribulations that he's persevered through. What an awesome guy. Thanks, Billy. We've got a lot of fun stuff.
Thrilled to be here, pal.
Awesome. You guys, stay tuned, listeners. Thanks.
Austin Hill here. Did you see the big news about Apple? They're investing $2 billion in what they call a new global command center, and they're not expanding in their home turf of the Silicon Valley. No, Apple is expanding into Phoenix, Arizona. And if it's time for you to invest and expand, it's time to call the relocation and expansion professionals at Century 21 Northwest Realty, Northwest Phoenix, 800-678-0299. Phoenix is America's 6th largest city and one of the fastest growing metropolitan regions, with a low cost of doing business, an educated workforce, and proximity to San Diego, Los Angeles, and Las Vegas. Now is the time to invest. Find out why companies big and small, like Bank of America, GoDaddy.com, and Intel all have operations in Phoenix. 800-678-0299. 800-678-0299. 800-678-0299, and visit C21Northwest.com. That's the letter C, the digits 21Northwest.com.
Tuned to that short break. We've got a great show going right now, you guys. We've got Billy O'Connor. Billy is a very, very interesting man. As we were just learning, he was sharing briefly, and we're going to say briefly, about an instance where he woke up and there was a prosthetic leg next to him and just doesn't really know where it came from, and we'll just kind of leave it at that. But we're going to kind of backtrack a little bit, Billy, and first and foremost, I wanted to thank you for your service to the military, for protecting our freedom, and also as a firefighter. You know, first responders are very important. I'm a full-time realtor for Century 21 Northwest. I give $500 to all military, first responders, nurses, doctors, teachers, anyone who makes a difference in our community. If you buy or sell a home, I give you $500 in appreciation and thank you for your service and your sacrifice. So let's kind of go back to New York. We'd kind of further down the road a little bit down to the Keys, but I want to go back to New York. You had mentioned that you'd had a couple pubs and restaurants, and you'd also said that you were a bookie at some point. Now, as a bookie in the Bronx, okay, I'm picturing these movies, and you know, you don't pay up, I'm breaking your legs, or your house is going to get burned down, or your car is going to blow up. How much of that is actually fiction or nonfiction? Tell us a story or two, and no names, obviously. We'll keep it all out there.
Obviously, you're going to use no names, yeah.
But just a little background of how true these movies and kind of interpretations are.
Well, you know, is this thing on?
It's on.
Can you hear me okay? It seems like it's okay. I'm sorry. Anyway, we call those guys serious people. You know, in quotation marks, serious people. You know, like, in other words, you make a bet with certain. I mean, when you take action, especially in the old days, I mean, I took action before I got on the job, before I got on the fire department. And again, it was because of my compulsions. Like I was a gambler. I was a sick gambler. I bet on anything. You know what I mean? I bet on 2 roaches crawling across the desk. It doesn't make any difference to me. All I wanted was the juice.
The juice.
I was a juice junkie. So I bet, and of course I was always losing because 10% is 10%. It's very pure science mathematics. You know, if you got to pay what they call vigorish, in other words, if you bet a football game and you say Dallas is playing the Giants, you got to bet 110 to win 100. The $10 is the juice. That's the
juice.
That's the vigorish. That's what the bookmakers spread. Well, you can't beat that. So consequently, I mean, you start making a lot of money when you're a bookmaker. You know, the problem is the hard part of the business is collecting the money. You know, anybody can take action and win. It's how do you get the people to pay? And I'm not a tough guy. I'm not a wise guy. So you had to have somebody
Who was,
exactly. And in them cases, you ran into what we call, you know, the D's, do's, dems, and those guys. You know what I mean? And, yeah, I dealt with it. As a matter of fact, one of the guys I used to, when I first came back from Nam, I was working on the Teamsters. I was delivering appliances for Sears throughout the 5 boroughs of Manhattan. And one of the guys I used to work with, I told him I needed a bookie because I had to, you know, I wanted to get in action. And his brother was a legitimate wise guy. His brother was like what we call like, you know, if it's an Italian guy in New York and his name ends in a vowel, they all like to pretend they're connected. You know, we call those guys paleo mozzarellas. You know, like they're not the real mozzarella that you get in the delis. They're paleo mozzarella, the stuff that's in plastic. You know, it's not the real deal. And this guy was a real wise guy. I mean, his brother. So his brother hooks me up with this big bookmaker on Arthur Avenue. And one of the runners for this big bookmaker on Arthur Avenue was Joe Pesci, the actor. Because in them days, he was a runner. He was just a runner for a bookmaker. And he
collecting the money, right? Collecting the
Well,
bets.
he was a runner. He used to take in action. Like, he'd go out and get action for people, you know, like...
okay.
And then he'd get 25% of your losses. But he also played guitar in Michael's in a restaurant that Joe owned. And he'd walk around singing songs and
Really?
stuff. Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's a funny story how he got discovered. It's in my book, actually. There's a chapter in my book about how Pesci got discovered. And De Niro coming into Michael's, into the restaurant. And Pesci thought that it wasn't really De Niro. It was some guy breaking his chops, you know, and it's a funny story.
And we'll talk about his book here a little bit later in the show, Confessions of a Bronx Bookie. It looks pretty captivating. I know I'm going to try to get a read in on it. So you're doing the bookie side of it.
I'm making tons of money, and of course, when easy money comes predictable outcomes if you're compulsive. You know what I mean? Like
you like to spin and gamble, and
man, I was like,
you're all in. Keep it going.
Let's go to South America. Let's go party. Let's go to Europe. Let's party in Europe. Let's go here. Let's go there. And I did that for a few years, and then I got on a job when I got on the fire department. Of course, that started to change. And the funny thing, after you bet tons of money on sports, and then you finally get through that addiction. Now sports is like, it's like grass watches it grow. You know what I mean? I can't be bothered. I you know, and I've always been a big sports fan, but I was a fight fan. I couldn't even get out of bed the other day for that fight. I was like, you know, who cares? You know, like it was like
exactly right. It's just
it's like
so you're what we're getting at. Your tendencies, your addictions, the things that used to give you that juice when you were younger and in this environment, those have kind of gone out the door.
Right.
Now there's other things that have come in and taken place.
Exactly.
And give you
the dynamic
that same
has changed. Exactly. Now I get my juice from doing stand-up comedy. I get my juice from writing. It's hard to believe that you can get juice from writing, but I love the written word. I don't know if it's part of being Irish or you know, I think Yeats said that, you know, the Irish taught the English how to use their own language. There could be a little truth to that. You know, the Irish are born storytellers.
Absolutely.
And I've got a lot of stories to tell. So I went back to school and at the University of Florida. I got my journalism degree. And my initiation into writing, I started writing a column in Gainesville. It went out to 50,000 every week. And it was about gambling, addiction, and alcoholism. I called it Lost in the Sauce, actually was the name of it.
That's a pretty catchy term, Lost in the
Sauce. And it was about being drunk in Belgium and in Bangkok and the streets of Europe and South America and in the Bronx and New York and what it was like to be Irish growing up in the streets of New York. And marching 23 straight Patty's Day and it's Patty's Day parade. I don't think I ever missed a parade. And about the madness, the madness of alcoholism, and so that's where I went with that.
And so let's kind of bring it all back to speed. So we're talking about all the crazy stuff that you went through in your childhood growing up. You went to the military, saw some crazy stuff, came back to the Bronx, owning some restaurants, some pubs. You're working for the Teamster Union. You had mentioned that Jimmy Hoffa was the president of the Teamsters Union when you were working for him. How Joe Pesci came about. And just, at that time, having a lot of fun, living life. You know nothing different. And let's kind of fast forward, and there's lots and lots of stories as you've mentioned, and we're not going to get in. We don't have time for many of them, but if you get to your book, Confessions of a Bronx Bookie, there's a lot of those stories in there, kind of that fill in the gap. Now we're going to get to the Florida Keys. Okay, so you head down to Florida. You're retired. You got this boat. You're doing this. Wake up one morning. There's something in your bed. You don't know where it came from, whose it is. Right around that time, you start thinking, man, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to live. I'm only on this planet once. Am I here for a long time or am I here for a good time? And up until that point, you were here for a good time. But then something had to have kind of shifted to where you thought, there's more to life than this. I have more to give to people, to the community. I have this talent that I can share these stories and try to help influence people positively and share my addictions and things that I've been through. Tell us kind of about that transition in your life.
That's exactly what happened to me. I mean, and I don't know how religious anybody is out there, or, and I'm not one to figure out what's going on. I mean, who knows? I mean, we've been arguing about, is there a God? Is there not a God since the dawn of time? So 5,000, 6,000 years of civilization. I don't have any answers, but I know something's going on. I've had too many personal interventions to know that something is going on.
There's something bigger and better
Jesus,
out there.
Whether it's energy, whether it's science, whether it's
karma, who knows?
I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I know that something's going on. So I've had 4 or 5 personal interventions that I talk about in the book. And, of course, that's what happens to this guy. My character, my protagonist's name is Connor Kelly in the book. And it's about the madness of his life and then how he comes back to redemption, how he finds himself. And I had a similar case. I had an epiphany. I had a moment in time that I realized that life is short, that we're here for a short thing. And everything you ever really wanted, anything you ever wanted in life is on the other side of fear.
Everything in our life is fear-based.
It's just a question of getting up and doing it. And if you could say to yourself, you know what, it really doesn't matter. This doesn't matter.
Not that scary. It's
this
not that big of a deal.
Right? I mean, I ran into burning buildings for 23 years in the South Bronx and Harlem. You know what I mean? I crawled through rice paddies in Vietnam. I mean, so I'm going to get on a stage. I'm going to do stand-up. So who's going to remember 2 minutes after I walk off the stage? You know what I mean? Who knows? Who cares? And if you haven't made a fool of yourself by the time you're 60, you really haven't had much of a life.
Yeah, where's the fun at?
Exactly. So, I went back to school and I started writing. And
now talk about that. So you're living in Florida. You say you're just jogging by the university.
Well, what happened? Yeah, my girlfriend, who was younger than me, she had 2 master's degrees. She was an academic, and she got an offer to go to the University of Florida to get a doctorate for a scholarship. So we moved up to Gainesville, and I was jogging past the university one day, and I have always been a heavy reader, voracious reader. I don't even own a television set. Always read a lot of political science, a lot of history, a lot of philosophy. I read fact, not too much fiction. And I was jogging past the university one day, and I said, you know what, man, I'm trying to teach myself Spanish. I always read a lot of political science to keep my mind alert. And I said, why don't I go to school? I've always, I wanted to go to college all my life, and Vietnam sort of got in the way. So I went to the University of Florida, and I enrolled. And
what was it like going in there, your first class, the first day? Now, we just talked about fear and how fear kind of drives everything in our life. So at this point, you're 58 years old, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you just signed up for college. You went to the bookstore. You got your books, and it's the first day of the first semester of college, and you're walking into that first class. Tell us how how you were able to overcome that. What got you through
Well, you know
that?
what? Actually, that was like I had a grin plastered on my face. I mean, I was eager. You know what I mean? I was older than most of my professors. And you'd be shocked at how many academics, not shocked, I guess, they wanted to be firemen. A lot of them were interested in my life, you know. And, of course, I was taking a journalism class. So taking journalism, everybody's looking for a story because they have to come up with stories. So I was getting interviewed every day because there's an old guy running
this
around.
Guy, Billy,
Yeah,
the
what's
Irish
this guy's
Bronx
story?
kid, man. This guy's a little crazy. Give me
What's
something
his
to write
story?
about, Billy.
Exactly.
What's your story?
Exactly. So it was a lot of fun, but I took it seriously. You know, when you're paying for your own credits and you're at that age, you know, you're not there to waste your time because time becomes a premium. The older you get, the more valuable time becomes.
Really?
Of course, because the less you have of it. You know, when you're 19 years old, you believe that you have the world ahead of you. You don't know that for sure, but that's what you think. Because, I mean, you could tell a 19-year-old kid to charge a machine gun. He's going to charge because he thinks he's indestructible. You tell a 58, 67-year-old man to charge a machine gun, he's going to say, hey, how about you charging a machine gun?
And if it works out well, maybe I'll think about it.
I'll be observing through heavy lenses because it's like anything else. It's the less you have of it, the dearer it becomes. So here I am going to college. I'm not going there to waste my time. I'm going there to learn how to write.
You're full. You're all
Yeah,
in.
I'm all in.
But just like with everything in your life.
Yes, exactly.
You're all in.
I'm all in. And my style of writing, what happened is I started writing this column, and when you write a column, they give you inches. They say you got 7 inches, which amounts to 1,000 words. So I'd write a story in a day and a half. And I just tell the story in my own words. That's the way I write. My voice is on the page. You can hear my voice. Well, I write like a 3,000-word story in a day and a half, and then I would spend a week to cut it down to 1,000 words so as not to waste the reader's time. You know what I mean? So the editing became the way I write. Like, I'm not a good writer, but I'm a great rewriter.
Is that part of your juice when you're going in to do the rewrite? Like,
exactly.
Okay, it's cool. I can put my story down, but I really get into it when I'm picking and choosing the best parts to make sure I'm not wasting the reader's time. Every word they're reading is as effective as it can be for me to convey my emotion.
Explosive verbs, specific nouns. I used to take a 3,000-word paper and cut it down to 1,000 words without losing any content. And it became like a game. You know, like it became, all right, I'm over it now for the 40th time. Can I get 10 more words out of it? I got to get it down to 1,000. But it ended up becoming my style, which is a good thing because today the attention span of kids, I mean, between Twitter and texting, they don't have much of an attention span. So the way I write is subject, verb, object, subject, verb, object, subject, verb, object, go, 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 go.
Which is what you learned in journalism school at the University of Florida. So you guys, we're going to take one more short break. We're going to come back. We're going to kind of talk about the rest of Billy getting his degree, really focusing on his writing, his book, and then what that's kind of done to take him to the next step with his comedy career. He's already been well-renowned in a couple competitions. So stay tuned. We got a lot more fun stuff coming back with Billy.
Austin Hill here. Did you see the big news about Apple? They're investing $2 billion in what they call a new global command center, and they're not expanding in their home turf of the Silicon Valley. No, Apple is expanding into Phoenix, Arizona. And if it's time for you to invest and expand, it's time to call the relocation and expansion professionals at Century 21 Northwest Realty, Northwest Phoenix, 800-678-0299. Phoenix is America's 6th largest city and one of the fastest growing metropolitan regions. With a low cost of doing business, an educated workforce, and proximity to San Diego, Los Angeles, and Las Vegas, now is the time to invest. Find out why companies big and small, like Bank of America, GoDaddy.com, and Intel all have operations in Phoenix. 800-678-0299. 800-678-0299. 800-678-0299. And visit C21Northwest.com. That's the letter C, the digits 21Northwest.com.
It's a beautiful day. All right. What a fun show, you guys. All right, so we're coming in the last segment of the show. We got Billy O'Connor here. Just to kind of recap, Billy was family born in Ireland, immigrated in 1950 through Ellis Island, grew up in Bronx, New York, proudly served our Air Force in the Vietnam War, and was a first responder at 9/11. this guy's just got it all. So where we left off is we're just kind of talking about getting into writing the column and how you're really starting to have fun with it, to where it's, man, I like, this is fun. It's a challenge, and this is like, I'm locking my door in my house for days at a time, and I'm just writing because this is giving me that juice that I'm not getting from the drugs, the sex, the alcohol, the gambling, the living the dangerous life. Keep talking about this.
Well, that's exactly what happened. I mean, it starts to become intoxicating. When you're walking around campus, and I used to wear this fedora, because...
you were the guy with the fedora?
Yeah, I always wore the fedora because only when I started doing comedy, a long time ago, I remember I was at the Clay fight, with Clay was fighting, back when he was Cassius Clay. Clay was fighting Frazier in the first... No, Clay was fighting Doug Jones way before he became Muhammad Ali. And I was up in the top row in the garden, up in the nosebleeds. And my friend says to me, hey, look. And of course, the ring looked like a postage stamp, from where I was.
You're way up there.
Yeah, I was up in the nosebleeds. And my friend says to me, hey, man, look, there's Don King. And I said, wow, yeah, Don King. And he said to me, you don't think he wears that hair by accident, don't you? I mean, this way you could spot Don King anyplace. Because I don't know if you're familiar with Don King, but he looked like he combed his hair with a firecracker.
Everybody knows Don King, and he did that for a reason.
For a reason.
He could have cut his hair and combed it like a normal person.
Well, when I started doing stand-up, I said, you know what? No one's going to remember my name, but if I wear the fedora, they're going to say the old guy with the hat. The old guy with the hat, he's pretty fun.
Building your brand, building your image.
Exactly. So the thing was, in Gainesville, which is a pretty small community, I started walking around, and whenever I put the hat on, people would come up to me and say, hey, you're the guy who writes that column. If I took it off, I was invisible.
You're just another normal guy.
Exactly. You're the guy who does the comedy. Hey, I've seen you do comedy. You're hilarious. So the deal was with the hat, it became like a trademark.
Well, how come the fedora is not on today?
I'm here for an interview. My face ain't showing up on radio.
Okay, I got it.
my mug's bad enough.
There you go.
But I wear it when I do comedy just because it's distinctive. But yeah, it became like, one day I was in a bar in Gainesville. I wasn't drinking because I was going to college and I had quit already. But I was in a bar and I was talking to, we were about to do stand-up, and I was talking to a couple of guys. And a guy came up to me who I didn't know, and I didn't have the hat on. And he said to me, hey, man, you're the guy who writes that column. And I said, yeah. I said, how'd you know that? He said, your voice, man. I can hear your voice in the column.
Get out of here.
And I said, do you know what kind of a compliment you just paid me for a writer? I said, that's an amazing compliment.
That's probably what they tell you in school.
Find your voice.
Find your voice and let someone else hear it and know it.
Exactly.
Wow.
So that was like intoxicating. And then people reading it. Then the first thing I ever wrote was an English 101 paper. I was going to just to prove that I was literate. And the first thing I ever wrote, the teacher submitted it to, she said, you mind if I do something with this? I said, it's an English 101 paper. What are you going to do with it? I never wrote anything before. And it went viral. It went out to 3 million people. And I ended up with like 400 emails from all over the world the next day. And that's why I decided to get into journalism. I said to my girlfriend, I said, wow,
I got something here.
Maybe I can write. And she goes, maybe. I said, what's the fastest way to learn? She said, journalism. So I learned how to write. I knew I had the stories because I had a bizarre life. And again, the guy who was lost, and my story here is about redemption. It's about how this guy found his way back. One of the girls who read it, who wrote me a review, and she said, Confessions of a Bronx Bookie. She said, wow, you had a lot to confess.
I mean, this book is pretty big. We got, 268 pages.
Well, actually, it started out as 500 pages.
So I was just going to say, this is probably volume 1 in a series of 10, it was 3 times this, and you cut it down.
Exactly,
it's just
right.
like you were doing with your columns.
Exactly. It took me a year to write it, and it took me a year and a half to edit it. Like, I never say in 4 words what I could say in 2 words. I never say in 2 words what I could say in 1 word. It's concise. It's tight. I don't waste the reader's time. There's no meta discourse is what it's called. Like, there's no, in my opinion. Well, we know it's your opinion, idiot. You're writing a book. You don't got to tell us it's your opinion. We get it's your opinion. You know what I mean? So there's none of that meta discourse. There's no padding. It's tight. The book is tight. Matter of fact, I edited it 40 times. I was so sick of looking at my own book. I said, this is the last time. And I actually thumbtacked each page of the book up to a wall. And I looked at each sentence through binoculars. Each sentence. And I said, I'm just looking for explosive verbs. I want specific nouns. I want to make sure the punctuation is right. When I sent that book to a professional editor, she sent it back and she said, I could make 12 changes. That's it.
Wow.
12 out of the whole book. And I pride myself in writing professionally.
So here it is. You know, you said you're not the religious guy, but whoever it is there, the big guy blessed you with this talent. It took 60 years for it to
manifest
and come to the surface to where you can take it from your mind through a pen onto a piece of paper. Yeah. And here you go. You've got the Confessions of a Bronx Bookie, and it's all about redemption.
Redemption. It's about how this guy found his way back, you know. And listen, whether it's Jesus, whether it's God, whether it's Muhammad, whether it's Yahweh, whether it's Buddha, whether it's energy, whether it's karma, whether it's serendipitous, I gotta believe something's going on. You know, if anybody thinks they got the answers, well, I'm open to listen to them.
Yep.
But I know I ain't got the answers. I got more and more questions. But something is going on. And I think I'm around for a reason. I should have been dead about 15 times, including 9/11, car accidents, alcoholism.
Burning building, everything. So you've got more lives than a cat.
Yeah, I should have drowned in the Mekong River in Vietnam. I have stories in there that... So I think I'm around for a reason. Now, whether that reason's to help people that have lost their way the way I lost my way, I don't know. But I know that I can tell stories. And I know that the book, it's got 48 reviews now on Amazon. Every one is 5-star. Everybody tells me it's a great read. I know it's a good read because I'm a reader. I'm a voracious reader. And I read other people's books and I go, it's good. And I'm not... Believe me, I'm not an egotist.
You're not
I'm not an egotist.
Your own chest. I get it.
Not at all. In fact, I'm probably the least pretentious guy you'll ever run into in the world because alcoholism by nature, it means you have low self-esteem. That's one of the symptoms.
Fear-based.
It's one of the symptoms. You know what I mean? So it's about overcoming this low self-esteem. Most comics are kind of dull off stage, to be honest with you, because they have low self-esteem. They're doing it because they got a flaw in their character.
Well, and they probably don't have this background of stories and experiences like you do. So I'm putting all my energy into that 15 minutes on stage, and when I'm off, I got nothing else left because I haven't had this awesome, exciting life that I've been blessed with to where, hey, I've got a lot to share. And like you said, I can guarantee you there's been people that have heard your stories, stand-up comedy, read your columns, now read your book. I can guarantee that you've helped a lot of people.
Well, you know what? One of the things that really, really made me feel good about that column, Lost in the Sauce, was it was coming into the summer, and I said, you know what? I always took classes in the summer anyway because I lived in Gainesville anyway, and time, again, is a premium. When you're my age, time is a premium. I wanted to get it done. And plus I was enjoying it. But I had a guy come up to me in a bar, and he told me again, but I had the hat on this time, and he said, you're the guy who writes those columns. And I said, yeah. And I said, but I think I'm taking a break for the summer because, the only kids, there's 50,000, 72,000, I think. 72,000 students at the University of Florida. So maybe there's 12,000 in the summer. So I said, I'm not going to write for 12,000, which sounds pretentious now, but that was the case. And this guy says to me, no, you got to write the columns. He says, I'm in a halfway house. He goes, every Tuesday when your column comes out.
We're waiting for your column to come
we go out, we grab 100 of those papers and give them out to everybody in the halfway house.
No way.
And I said, wow, man, you know what? Wow.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, that shows me that I'm in the right direction here because maybe I'm doing some good, because you don't know. See, the deal is when you do stand-up comedy, maybe you do it in front of 100 people. Maybe you do it in front of 300 people. Well, if you get really lucky and you're in a big improv, Tempe Improv, stand-up live, maybe you're opening in front of 600 people, which is great. The energy, the rush, it's amazing. However, if you write and it goes out to 3 million people, I wrote a column that went out to 3 million people. And I got like 600 emails the next day. That's what encouraged me. It was so intoxicating. I said, wow, man.
That's that juice again.
That's the juice. And that was the impetus to say, all right, obviously I could tell stories. How do I learn how to do this right? And I've been on that voyage ever since. And between the stand-up and the writing, I can't wait to get my feet on the ground. Life, I'm 67 now. I was 67 last week. And I got to tell you, to me, life begins at 60. And I really believe that. I believe it. I'm having more fun now than I ever had in my life, and I'm doing it sober.
So are they going to ask you to be on one of the AARP commercials and say that exact same thing, Billy?
I tell you, I believe that message. Honest to God, I can sell that message because I believe it.
Sincere, I can see the